Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode from Your Own Pathway. For those who don't know me, my name is Poiab. I'm a licensed psychotherapist turned empowerment life coach and organizational leadership consultant, where I bring my expertise, my knowledge, and my skills to empower all of you to forge your own path and to own it. So, confession time, I was not going to film all my episodes today. Unfortunately and fortunately, my schedule opened up because I had a few meetings that actually got canceled or rescheduled. And you know what? I was like, I'm already supposed to be recording, so I am going to record the rest of my episodes today with all the time that I have. And so, again, I'm a trained psychotherapist, and my before I switched over, before I transitioned to empowerment life coach and organizational leadership consulting, my area of specialty was grief, loss, and trauma. And those three, grief, loss, and trauma, are very much intertwined. And I worked with so many clients who were going through a lot of grief and loss because of their trauma, because of things that happened to them growing up, their current relationship with their parents, and often more than not, unfortunately, their parent or a parental figure was also their abuser. And one of the conversations that we had a lot was to forgive or to not forgive their abuser. In today's episode, I'm going to talk about that. How sometimes, a lot of times, especially right now, forgiveness can be so overrated. And I want to preface that we all have a chance. We all have choices. We all have a choice to decide if we want to forgive or if we don't want to forgive. And one of the things that you who's watching this or whoever was my client, one of the things that we had to discuss and to really dissect was, what does it mean for you to not forgive the person who caused you so much pain? And can you move on? Can you live a fulfilling life without forgiving that person? And again, more often than not, a lot of my clients said, you know what? I can. I can live a very fulfilling life without forgiving my abuser. And so today's episode, we are going to focus and really go into detail and dissect why forgiveness is so overrated and you can still heal without forgiving your abuser. So, without further ado, let's get going. I think one of the biggest myths that we've all been told, and I think especially here in America, in the West, with Christianity being, I think, the main religion. I know there's a lot of religions here, but that is like the founding fathers. It's like Christianity, the church, and everything. And there is a myth, and I want to shatter that myth today, is that, and it's been really shoved down, like so shoved down our throats for so long. The myth that we have to forgive our abuser, your abuser, in order to heal, in order to move forward, in order to have peace. I'm going to tell you today, no, no, you don't. You don't. And let me tell you why. Let me tell you something. Even without forgiving your abuser, you can still have a bold, beautiful, and live unapologetically. Okay. So the first part is why? Why forgiveness has been so romanticized. I, rom- so forgiveness, I'm putting my words together here. So so that I can, like not offend people, but also be real, be bold, and be honest. Is a lot of it comes from religion. The romanticism of forgiving is a lot of it comes from religion, especially Christianity. And full disclosure right now, I'm not Christian. I do not follow any organized religion. My personal belief is I feel like organized religion is very there are aspects that are very beautiful, but there are also aspects that are very manipulative, and with that manipulation comes a lot of abuse. And I think especially with Christianity, where forgiveness is seen as the ultimate virtue. We're often told to turn the other cheek or to forgive, to forgive, just forgive, and that forgiveness is what makes you a good person. But my problem with that is teaching has been twisted out of context and often weaponized. When forgiveness gets framed as moral obligation, it stops being about your healing and starts being about control. It becomes a way for the abuser or abusers or institutions or even entire systems to demand silence and compliance. Because if you don't forgive, suddenly you're the bitter person or you're the bitter one. You're the one holding grudges. Oftentimes, it's the victim that gets painted as the problem, while the abuser gets away, looking away like, oh, they're such a paragon, they're such a martyr, or they're so redeemed. And as I'm saying all of this, do you hear all this? Like, do you hear the gaslighting that I'm basically telling all of you? And right now, just saying those statements, there's so much power, control, and manipulation in that statement. Unfortunately, that's how forgiveness has been romanticized. It's sold as this magical cure for all, as if forgiving your abuser somehow makes you more holy, more enlightened, more worthy. But in reality, that narrative often keeps people locked in cycles of abuse, especially if the abuser or abusers have passed on. There is still so much power and control in a manipulation that that abuser has power over you or over certain people that they abused for so long. What it does is it convinces them, the victims, that in order to move on, they have to give up their right to anger, to justice, and especially to truth. But here's the bold truth: you can move on without forgiving. Your healing does not require erasing what happened, excusing it, or pretending that you are okay with it. You don't have to carry the cross of someone else's sins in order to prove you are healed. That's not strength, that's indoctrination. Moving on to part two. How can you reclaim your power without forgiving? Again, here is another truth: healing is not about making your abuser comfortable. Healing is not about making sure the world sees them in a good light. Healing is about you, about reclaiming your story, your energy, your voice, and your life. When you refuse to forgive an abuser, you're not being petty. You're actually being quite powerful. You're saying, I refuse. I refuse to give another inch. I don't allow you to have another inch. I refuse to let you twist my healing into your redemption. Okay. And I think we see so much of that is, oh, but you have to, that's redemption. That's the only way for you to have your redemption. They didn't have power you because you forgave. You know what? You don't have to forgive shit. I'm being bold, I'm being honest, and I'm saying how it is. You don't have to forgive shit because you can still reclaim your power without forgiving. And this means that you get to decide what your boundaries look like. You decide who has access to you. You decide how to carry your story forward. And the most liberating part about all of this is you no longer let your healing be measured by whether or not you've made peace with the person who harmed you. And I want to be clear, definitely want to be clear that forgiveness is whatever you choose it to be. It is yours to define. You get to decide what it means for you, not what the pastor, not what a family member or society says it has to mean. As a matter of fact, unfortunately, the people that I just mentioned, they're probably the ones that want to keep you in the cycle of abuse. They want to protect the abuser, unfortunately. Forgiving does not equal forgetting. Forgiving does not mean excusing. Forgiving does not mean welcoming them back into your life if they're still living. You can certainly forgive in a way that honors you, or you can choose not to forgive at all. Either choice is valid and either choice is powerful because the power is in the choice and the power is in your choice. Sometimes, though, reclaiming your power looks like cutting contact and never looking back. Sometimes it looks like telling the truth and telling the truth about what happened, even if it makes others uncomfortable. Sometimes it looks like pouring all that energy you use to spend on them back into you, into your joy, into your work, into your relationships, and most especially into your healing. The most radical part about all this is that what you can do is build a life so full, so aligned, so unapologetically yours that your abuser no longer holds a seat at the table of your mind. Now, that is a victory. That is a true victory. And again, not forgiving does not mean that you cannot have a fulfilling life. So, moving on to part 3 here. What are alternatives to forgiveness? So, if forgiveness isn't the only way forward, what does healing look like? Let's break this. Let's break this down because there are powerful alternatives that honor your truth without ever needing to put a bow on what happened. First thing to do is get clarity. Get clarity over confusion. And what this means is name exactly what happened without minimizing it, without sugarcoating it, without gaslighting, cut through all the BS, through the gaslighting, denial, and manipulation of what happened to you. Second thing is, my favorite B word is boundaries. Boundaries over obligation. Boundaries don't require forgiveness. They don't. What they do is they require courage. And sometimes a boundary is the loudest form of self respect for yourself. Next is release over reconciliation. Release says, you know what? I'm done carrying your weight. I'm done making your choices my responsibility. I choose to set down the baggage that you put on me. That's not about freeing them. That's actually about freeing yourself. Having justice over silence. Sometimes the most healing choice isn't to forgive, it's to speak the truth, to seek accountability, and to take action. And lastly, is the redefinition over indoctrination. If you choose to forgive, let it be on your terms, not theirs, not anybody else's about what you should do. Too many people have ideas or inputs about how to forgive, and you get to decide how you want to forgive. And again, let me say this clearly. Let me say this clearly. If you choose not to forgive your abuser, your situation, your past, that does not mean that you are broken. It does not mean that you're bitter, and it does not mean that you can't live in peace. You can certainly build a fulfilling, joyful, extraordinary, abundant life with strong boundaries, deep love, and unshakable peace without ever forgiving the persons who harmed you. That is your right. That is your freedom, and that is more than enough. So, moving on to part four is the grief and loss of the forgiveness myth. Let's be real. I feel like the only way I can be is be real, be bold, be raw, be honest. And let's be real. There is grief there. Because for many of us, we were raised to believe that forgiveness is the golden ticket. You know, I'm imagining my golden ticket here, like Charlie from the Chocolate Factory. That if we just forgave, we'll feel lighter, freer, more spiritual, and more whole. And realizing that's a bunch of fucking bullshit. That's not true at all. It actually fucking hurts. And I'm not going to excuse my language here. There's grief in accepting that some people will never apologize. Grief in knowing that some relationships will never be repaired. Grief in letting go of the fantasy that forgiveness will magically transform abusers into safe people. And unfortunately, that's a loss. That's a real, very real loss right there. And for many of us, for many of you, there's an even deeper wound. The belief that if you can't forgive, there's something wrong with you, that you're the bad person, that you're bitter, you're unworthy, or somehow you're less holy, especially if you come from a background where there's a lot of, you grew up in a very religious background. And I'm going to tell you that this is one of the most toxic lies out there. Because what it does is this shifts the shame from the abuser onto the survivor. It convinces you that because of your inability to forgive, that makes you the problem. When in reality, the problem was never yours to carry. Again, for those who grew up very, and in the very religious or cultural traditions that really elevated forgiveness above everything else, this belief runs, again, especially deep. It can feel like you are betraying your faith, your culture, even your family if you don't forgive. And that's heavy. That's very heavy. That's another layer of grief, mourning, and again, indoctrination that told you that your goodness was measured by your ability to excuse harm. And here's the truth: not forgiving does not make you a bad person. Not forgiving does not mean you're broken. It means that you are human. It means that you are honoring your pain. It means that you are honoring your boundaries and honoring the fact that your healing does not require you to hand out redemption to someone who has not earned it. And I think here's the paradox of grief is that on the other side of its freedom, when you finally say, I don't have to forgive to heal, you grieve the myth, but you gain yourself. You step into a life where your peace is not tied to their apology. Your healing is not contingent on their repentance. Your worth is not dependent on their redemption either. The grief is not the end of your story, okay? Grief is the closing of one chapter, or how I like to say it, a book. The chapter or the book of being held hostage by other people's expectation, and it is the opening of another. The chapter or the book of you fully living boldly and again unapologetically free. And that is where the trade is, and it's worth it. So, to close this off, again, I want to be crystal clear that you, whoever is watching this, you do not need to forgive your abuser. To live an extraordinary, fulfilling, again, wealthy, abundant, fulfilling life. Forgiveness can be overrated when it comes at the cost of your truth and your peace. Your healing is not dependent on their redemption. Your peace is not earned by easing your pain. Owning your story means that you get to choose. That, you know what, maybe one day you decide to forgive. And if it does, if it feels right for you, yes. If not, you don't have to. Maybe you decide that you'll never forgive. And you know what? That's okay too. Because the power is not in their apology, the power is in your choice. Remember that. And that right there is how you forge your own path. That's how you own it, okay? Whether you forgive or not. Remember, your life, your freedom, your healing, it all belongs to you. Again, that is all I have for today. I wanted to do this episode because there's so much going on right now where we who have been oppressed, people who have been abused by systems, by terrible people, by abusers, by whoever, whatever, somehow we are expected to show humanity when the other groups, the other systems never showed us any humanity. And yet um, we're painted as the bad ones for not giving a shit or for saying, you know what, I don't have to forgive and I can still live a fulfilling life. And you know what? Yeah, you are. And yeah, we are. So, again, thank you so much for joining me today. If this episode spoke to you, or if you are someone who, thought that you had to forgive and you chose not to and are living a beautiful life, share your story in the comments. If you found strength, courage, or clarity, share your story in the comments too. And I'd love for all of you to hit the like and subscribe button if this episode spoke to you. So, again, this is Poiab from Your Own Pathway. I hope you all have a wonderful day, wonderful week. Stay safe and take care of you. All right. Bye.